Good morning, good day, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 2 and plenary session 2 of the virtual edition of Mobile Learning Week 2020. My name is Susan Telcher. I'm head of capacity and digital skills development at the ITU Telecommunication Development Bureau. I will be moderating the panel session this morning. As you may know, ITU is a long-standing partner at UNESCO's Mobile Learning Week, and we are very happy to be part of this virtual edition of the event. Please be reminded that there is interpretation available for the session. This morning's session will be looking at innovative distance learning solutions as common good. So while yesterday's discussions focused a lot on policies and strategies with respect to distance education, what worked, what did not work, we heard from high-level policymakers. Today, we are looking at concrete solutions to distance learning and distance education. We will hear from practitioners, development agencies, the international community, and the private sector. All of these different stakeholders are actively engaged in developing concrete products and platforms in support of distance education. And there will be a number of questions that will be addressed in this panel and in the subsequent discussion. For example, what are the main functions and roles of diverse platforms in supporting distance learning? How can existing and emerging platforms be assessed in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, and long-term financial implications? What are innovative solutions to the development of distance learning content, including open educational resources? What are trusted technology solutions to the connection needs of teachers, students, classes, institutions? And what are some of the risks of engaging all students into long-term online learning, and how can they be anticipated and mitigated? And finally, how are the learning solutions contributing to the common good? So we have a distinguished panel with us for the session. We have 7 panelists whom I will briefly introduce now. First, Mr. Alex Wong, who is Senior Strategy Advisor at the Telecommunication Development Bureau of ITU. Then we have Mr. Paul Richard Fife, who is Director at the Department for Education and Global Health at NORAD. We have Mrs. Zora Yermeche, who is head of the Connect to Learn program at Ericsson. We have with us Mrs. Magdalena Briere Lopez Guerrero, who is Managing Director at Pro Futura Foundation. We have with us Mr. Wayne Holmes, who is Principal Researcher for Education at Nesta. We have with us Mr. Jiquan Wang, who is Overseas General Manager of Weidong Cloud Education Group in China. And we have with us Mrs. Nandini Chatterjee Singh, who is a Senior Project Officer at the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Welcome to all of you to this panel. We will run the session as follows. First, I will invite each panelist to make their presentation or intervention. Each panelist will have 8 minutes, and I already apologize for possibly interrupting you during your talk and let you know when time is up. But of course, this is in the interest of all other panelists and the participants. After the initial presentations, I will invite each panelist to briefly answer a question. And in the meantime, I'm inviting all participants to ask your questions in the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar platform. We will keep an eye on those questions and will either address them in the Q&A function or, if we have time, in the panel session following the presentations. So let me now pass the floor to our first panelist, Mr. Alex Wong of the ITU. Alex will deliver a presentation on GIGA, an initiative to connect every learner to the internet. So Alex, you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Susan. So my name is Alex Wong, a Senior Strategy Advisor in the Telecommunication Development Bureau at the ITU. And one of the roles I also have has been to lead the GIGA initiative that we are doing jointly with UNICEF, which we will talk more about. But as the first panelist, why don't I begin with a bit of a curtain riser, as I call it, a video that highlights some work that we recently completed together with UNICEF and UNESCO on the working group on school connectivity. And I think it's a good way to frame some of the thoughts that we will have in my comments later on. So if I can ask the video to be played, please.
How many schools are there in the world? Where are they located? And how many are connected to the internet? Well, the truth is, we don't know it yet. Education, the internet, and broadband connectivity have a tremendous potential to solve many of the world's most pressing challenges, including the Sustainable Development Goals. The COVID pandemic showed us how dependent we are on the internet and on connectivity to work, to communicate, and to learn. School closures affected 94% of learners worldwide and prompted governments to do an overnight switch to online learning. However, almost 47% of all primary and secondary students targeted by national online learning platforms do not have access to the internet at home. Many children don't even have internet at school. Education is at a global state of emergency. The Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development stands behind the School Connectivity Challenge. Today, it is proud to launch its report on the digital transformation of education, connecting schools, empowering learners. The report introduces a methodology and a framework for connecting schools to the internet based on a 4 pillars approach: map, connect, finance, and empower. It also showcases the work of UNESCO's eSchools initiative and GIGA, 2 global efforts aimed at connecting schools to the internet and at turning schools into entry points for connecting entire communities. This report is the result of 1 year's collaborative efforts. Connecting all schools of the world to the internet is an ambitious but necessary undertaking. But connectivity alone will not grant universal access to quality education. We need to provide all schools and all learners with safe and friendly environments, with qualified and motivated teachers, and with content that equips all children and youth with the appropriate skills they need to empower themselves and transform their communities. Act now. Download the report. Support the Broadband Commission Agenda for Action and sign the Declaration on Universal Child Online Safety. Join the Global Education Coalition and partner with GIGA to provide every young person with access to information, opportunity, and choice.
Great. So thank you for that. Let me now put on a presentation that I'll use to guide the rest of my comments. So let us get that up. So I'm going to talk a brief introduction of GIGA. And GIGA is an initiative that we launched with UNICEF a year ago with the objective to connect every school to the internet, but use that connection to the school to provide connectivity to the surrounding community and every citizen. So ultimately, it's about connecting every young person and every person ultimately to information, opportunity, and choice. I think many of you know the statistics. Right now, over half of the world is not on the internet or does not have meaningful access. And we also know that those without access to connectivity will not have the opportunities that those that do have. So GIGA, why is it possible now? This is an active, action-oriented, country-based initiative. It's not just reports and discussions. And we feel that the time is right now because there's been many innovations over the last few years that make connecting every school to the internet possible. First is the financing innovations that have happened. And we even can begin with the Global Anti-Vaccine Initiative, Gavi, many years ago, which introduced the concept of pooling demand across multiple geographies, the concept of advanced market commitments, and reverse auctions, and all the new instruments that are now emerging. Secondly, we have all sorts of new types of technologies that have made connectivity cheaper. We have ways to track if that connectivity is happening, and that's very important for donors, for investors, for private sector. And for Giga, focusing on schools as the most ubiquitous public access point to the internet makes a lot of sense. And the right hand shows a map of Colombia, where one of the phases of Giga is to map every country. And of course, what we found is many countries don't have every map, every school located. And so this graphic shows in doing the mapping of Colombia, using a combination of working with the government, but also using satellite imagery and some machine intelligence, additional schools were identified. And if the goal of Giga essentially would be to turn every dot on this map, every dot representing a school, green. Green meaning with sufficient connectivity that it can service not just the learners in that school, but also in the surrounding community. Our role as Giga, I think, takes the best of what the UN can do, which is to be an impartial and convening platform that connects the governments, the host countries, together with funders, supporters, and solution providers. And not only are we just convening, we're also very active, and it plays to the strengths of ITU and UNICEF. In addition to the structuring on the financing, which is one of the most critical elements, it's also about combining the strengths of ITU's regulatory and network and digital infrastructure expertise, which we all know that if you can't have connectivity unless you have the right policies and regulations in place. That's of course playing to the strengths of UNICEF with the focus on the child's digital skills and education. And we of course also look very much forward to having UNESCO working with us on Giga. So the pillars of the MAP, Finance, Connect, Empower, as highlighted in the video. Good to just highlight that we have a couple of our partners on Giga already in working with us on the panel. Ericsson is a global partner of Giga, helping with the mapping element. And NORAD, through the Digital Public Goods Alliance, is helping with the Empower elements. We're really thankful for that collaboration. We translate those four pillars into a process on how we work with each country. I won't go through this because of the time commitment, but we have an 11-step methodology where we methodically, working with the government, help identify every school, figure out how to help connect them, work with them to develop the financing packages, and then of course putting in the empowerment, the relevant content and skills. So here's where we are right now. Right now we're active in almost 15 countries across these 3 geographies of Africa, Central Asia, and Central America, with a lot of interest in additional countries in other parts of the world. And just to finish off, so here's the highlight of the working group report. If this presentation is shareable, you can all download that link. And a final comment is that we are featuring Giga. Giga is featured as one of the key ways forward to achieving universal connectivity in the Secretary General's Roadmap for Digital Cooperation. So we're looking forward to having many of you engage also through this process and how we can really make an impact with the Giga initiative. Thank you very much, Susan. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex, and also for observing the time. This is such a great initiative, and it also shows how much we can achieve by partnering together with other important players. So let me now give the floor to our next speaker, Paul Richard Five of NORAD. Paul will present the Global Digital Library as an example of a digital public good. And he will talk about how we can ensure effective use of different high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech distance learning tools with reference to NORAD's investments to strengthen literacy and learning. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you to Alex also for setting the stage also for both universal connectivity, but also making the translation to basically learning materials, which I'm going to do. And thank you to UNESCO and also to you for convening this conversation. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have over the past 6 months seen a large increase in the use of digital platforms to deliver education materials. This comes with significant opportunities, but also with some risks that need to be managed. For one, we know there is potential, significant potential in high-tech learning tools. We also know that the realization of this potential depends on well-functioning systems, proper access, and meaningful use by teachers and learners. The pandemic has clearly shown that there is still a great need for low-tech and no-tech solutions to complement high-tech. So global education is a top priority for Norwegian government in its international development assistance. As part of that, NORAD is a founding member of the International Global Book Alliance. The alliance convenes the global education community and works so that all children get access to the books they need in order to learn to read and read to learn. Ensuring access to quality reading books in a language that children understand is a fundamental part of achieving this bold ambition. Norway is managing the Global Digital Library, which is a flagship initiative within the Book Alliance. So the Global Digital Library, or GDL, collects existing openly licensed quality reading resources for classroom and leisure reading and makes them available on its digital platform. Currently, the GDL hosts around 5,000 books in nearly 70 languages. These books, importantly, have been quality assured in accordance with quality standards established by the Global Book Alliance. The content is available for reading on digital devices and also in print-friendly formats. One does not exclude the other, as both can be made available through a digital platform. We are also bringing onto the GDL platform interactive radio content for reading as a way of reaching additional groups with learning opportunities. The GDL, interestingly, also facilitates translation into more than 300 languages. During COVID-19, we have seen the importance of this functionality. As part of the shift in focus to provide learning opportunities at the household level, many governments need to increase the availability of learning resources in languages which are spoken at home. Also, as part of the Translate a Story campaign, UNESCO and NORAD are in the process of supporting 7 governments to translate books into relevant national languages. NORAD has also worked with ADEA, the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, to support translation. So in what way is the GDL a digital public good? That is because the licensing of the reading books it hosts enables others, many others, to freely use the books, but also to translate and adapt them. There is tremendous potential in this approach for reducing fragmentation, bringing down costs, and for allowing more active involvement of governments and teachers in the curation of content. It is important that distance learning tools are meaningfully used by learners and teachers. NORAD is therefore engaging with teachers, particularly through co-chairing the International Teacher Task Force, which has its secretariat at UNESCO and brings together a broad range of partners. When the COVID-19 crisis started, the Teacher Task Force issued a call for action and followed up with a guidance for policymakers. These underline teachers' key role in identifying learning gaps, as well as the need to reinforce teachers' capacities for pedagogical innovation, including digital literacy and ICT skills. The Global Partnership for Education, GPE, and other partners have also underscored the key role of teachers by providing additional support that also benefits teachers and schools to transition to digital platforms, as well as use of low-tech and no-tech solutions to reach everyone while schools are closed. In this context, let me emphasize that teachers' use of technologies is also crucial for reaching learners with disabilities. Teachers' capacities to use technology in an effective manner cannot be seen only as a matter of individual skills. We are experiencing an increase in the digital divide between those with and those without digital competencies, in particular in developing countries. To address this challenge, NORAD is entering into a partnership with ITU and Cisco in Ghana for the Digital Transformation Centers initiative. This center will offer digital skills training programs such as ICT education for teachers, coding for kids, ICT education for artisans, and ICT education for the youth. In conclusion, we need to invest in universal connectivity and innovative distance learning. This is only part of the way to ensuring equitable learning. It matters to have the partnerships we are able to leverage, the efficiency of rolling out new solutions, and a sharp focus on meaningful use by teachers and learners to minimize learning gaps and build back a stronger and inclusive educational system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. And also thank you for mentioning our new partnership between NORAD and ITU on the Digital Transformation Center initiative, which indeed focuses on developing digital skills in the communities of the countries, and with a particular focus we have here with you on Ghana. And it's one of the examples where we can reach out and improve the skills level at basic and intermediate level throughout the communities. So thank you very much for your contribution. And I'm now going to turn to our next panelist. And let me also remind the audience, you have the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar platform, where please feel free to add any questions that come up. So our next panelist will then be Zora Yermechi. Sorry for not pronouncing it correctly, who is head of the Connect to Learn at Ericsson. And Zora will present how Ericsson is helping to build an inclusive digital infrastructure, empowering teachers, students, and schools to deliver first-rate digital education solutions that are accessible for all, as well as contributing to digital skills development for young people across the globe. Over to you, Zora.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for the introduction. So as you mentioned, I will be talking today about how Ericsson is helping to provide distance learning solutions as common good. In my speech, I will share some of the work that we've done with partners currently present in this panel, but also I will, in my speech, will echo some messages already shared by Alex and Paul before reiterating really their importance. So I would like to start by reflecting on today's context, where we see that bridging digital inequality to ensure no one is left behind is a must. The unprecedented pandemic crisis we are experiencing demonstrated the importance of cooperation and the urgency to join forces and work together to build back better and stronger to address the deepening digital divide. As magnified by COVID-19 pandemic, having access to connectivity and digital learning platforms is essential to ensure that learning never stops. Digital platforms will increasingly be the basis of future work and opportunity, and consequently, those without internet will have less access to good jobs and opportunity in the future. As a major telecommunication company, Ericsson's mission in this context is first and foremost to help provide connectivity for resilience in educational systems. The lack of internet in the COVID-19 era has prevented some of the world's most vulnerable children from accessing remote learning as a result of school closures. This has contributed to an already growing global education crisis. The GIGA initiative introduced earlier by our colleague Alex from ITU is recommended in the UN Secretary General's Roadmap for Digital Cooperation as a groundbreaking partnership to connect every school in the world to the internet. At Ericsson, we are most proud to be the first private sector partner to make a multi-million-dollar commitment to GIGA to help map the internet connectivity landscape for schools and their surrounding communities. Before GIGA can connect schools, it needs to understand where the connectivity gaps are. This is where we see Ericsson's expertise playing an important role. We are providing our unique connectivity intelligence and data science capabilities, helping to collect, validate, analyze, and visualize school connectivity data in real time. So the live real-time mapping of the school connectivity will serve as an accounting platform for governments, ensuring that connectivity reaches every school and ultimately every learner. Now, as embodied in the name of our flagship education program, Connect to Learn, we aim to help build an inclusive digital infrastructure, the connectivity, as well as empower teachers, students, and schools by delivering quality digital education solutions that are accessible to all. Among the main functions and roles of diverse platforms in supporting distance learning, from our perspective, it's to provide content that is customized for the needs, the expectations, and the digital proficiency of the learners. So digital skills are at the center of the ongoing fourth industrial revolution and have become a prerequisite for the future workforce. It is essential today to acquire specific skills or practices that are required to use varied devices across various platforms and applications. These skills need to be applicable to the diverse circumstances and contexts where the learners need to use them. So for instance, children and youth of today need to develop more than just digital basic skills, such as higher skills as computer programming, automation, game development, app development. These skills are known to support higher order mental development, as well as encourage underrepresented groups to pursue advanced education to enter the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In response to this demand, Ericsson provides online programs that target different age groups and competence levels, essentially with digital skill development, including programs that are designed to develop and attract talents into the ICT industry. It is essential from our perspective to bridge the gap between the skills of current and future workforce and those sought by the job market. One of the questions we aim to cover in today's session is how can existing and emerging platforms be assessed in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, and long-term financial implications. So providing opportunities for learners to assess their progress as well as accreditation that can help increase their employability prospects is a key element. For instance, through our digital learning platform, Ericsson Educate, we currently provide free access to content related essentially to emerging technologies. The intention with this curriculum is to supplement university students' ongoing technical studies with courses that would strengthen their ICT skills, covering topics such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, telecommunication, more generally 5G, Internet of Things, and so on. We consider that companies in the IT sector, such as Ericsson, play an important role in supporting the proliferation of high-quality training programs that enhance industry-ready education to make students employment-ready. Now, the Ericsson Digital Learning Portal is also leveraged to host content developed or curated by some of our partners, such as UNESCO. Earlier this year, as part of our contribution to the UNESCO-led Global Education Coalition, we jointly launched with UNESCO a new digital skills learning program that has specific emphasis on providing access to artificial intelligence skill development. The focus is on providing teachers and curriculum developers with the tools and resources to develop learning material for students from kindergarten to grade 12. The portal called Teaching AI for K-12 is a one-stop repository of resources for all educators around the world. I warmly invite you to join the workshop Ericsson is co-hosting this afternoon at 2 p.m. Paris time with UNESCO and colleagues from the academia, and where this joint work will be introduced. I believe this key topic will also be covered more comprehensively by Mr. Wayne Holmes from Nesta in a few minutes. More generally, this work stems from the need for digital capacity building to extend beyond individuals to institutions. So what are the uncharted risks of engaging all students into long-term online learning? As rightly highlighted at the opening ceremony yesterday by Mrs. Doreen Bogdan-Martin, director at ITU, computers cannot replace teachers. The power of human interactivity, the teacher-learner relationship to support, motivate, and inspire the learner in their journey cannot be solely replaced by a library of high-quality digital content. So mentorship through digital platforms is one route that we have been investigating as an innovative solution to help in the delivery of distance learning content to meet the needs of learners at different ages and different contexts. This summer, for instance, as a member of the Global Education Coalition, we partnered with UNESCO and Technovation, another member of the coalition, in a pilot mentorship project for girls between the age of 10 and 20, and 18 actually. And we had more than 80 Ericsson employees volunteering to mentor girls in 6 different countries. Following a project-based approach, we've seen very much success coming out of that pilot. So to close my speech, I would say that I would like to reiterate the importance of cooperation and the urgency to join forces and work together to address the deepening digital divide. And from our perspective, the importance of connectivity as a key element of the common good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zora, for this important contribution, and also for highlighting the importance of school connectivity, the mapping exercise you're doing with GIGA, which helps to target the investments in digital infrastructure, and also for pointing out to the higher level skills needed, because indeed there is a huge skills gap in the labor market, and in particular in the ICT industry. So with this, let me now turn to our next panelist, Mrs. Magdalena Breer Lopez Guerrero of Pro Futura Foundation. Magdalena will look at digital education in times of COVID-19 and present innovative solutions of Pro Futura, in particular a digital education program that is aimed at training and supporting teachers and at facilitating personalized learning for students through technology. Over to you, Magdalena.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much for your introduction. Let me also thank UNESCO for inviting us to share our work and experiences at this Mobile Learning Week. It is an honor to be part of this panel and to be together with long-standing and experienced organizations like you all. Let me start by making a brief introduction of who we are and what we have done during the pandemic through a short video. This video.
Education is the most powerful tool for transforming the world. At Pro Futuro, we have been improving the opportunities of millions of children in vulnerable environments through quality digital education since 2016. We implement a digital education framework that is based on training and supporting teachers and on personalizing the learning of each student through technology. We have achieved a lot since Telefónica Foundation and La Caixa Foundation launched the Pro Futuro program. We're already present in 38 countries in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia. We've trained over 450,000 teachers. We've improved the education of 11.5 million children, and we've created a network of partners to ensure the sustainability of the project. The school closure throughout the world as a result of COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of access to digital education. For this reason, in order to respond to the resulting educational crisis, at Pro Futuro, we've adapted our education framework to take education beyond classrooms. opening our contents to teachers, students and families for free, and adapting our training materials so that nobody is left behind. We have also extended our offer of educational resources in partnership with international governments and institutions such as UNESCO, UNHCR, the World Bank, the Organization of American States, the Organization of Ibero-American States, the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, and the Ministries of Education from various countries. And in Spain, we donated technological material to families with fewer resources to prevent the digital gap from exacerbating the education gap. Because our wish is to transform the future of 25 million children in the world by 2030. Community by community, school by school, person by person, we're closer to achieving it.
Thank you. At Profuturo, we strongly believe that the digitalization of education contributes to narrowing the educational gap in the world and supports country development and social equity. Digital education is a powerful tool that can tear down geographic and socio-economic barriers and transform the world. Technology can reach children that would not have access to education otherwise, and tailor teaching to different environments to offer equal learning opportunities to everybody. During the past 4 years at Profuturo, we have demonstrated that it is possible to deliver quality education anywhere in the world. Over the past several months, we have used every possible tool to keep on reaching the unconnected, ensuring the continuity of teacher training, even in remote areas with no internet connection or access to technological devices. We have produced interactive presentations, podcasts, audio and video lessons for radio and TV broadcasting. We have created WhatsApp forums and distributed printed materials door to door. We have seen at Profuturo is that COVID crisis has made even more evident the existing digital divide that has left behind, once again, the most vulnerable population. We already knew about the need of a change in education. That was the reason why Profuturo was established. What we see now is that the current situation is forcing us to do this transformation faster and in a more coordinated way. Before the COVID-19, the situation we were facing in education was already critical. The message that the UN was sending was clear. We were going too slow to reach the SDG 4. According to UN data, the pandemic has worsened the situation with 90% of students out of schools around the world and 500 million students with no access to remote learning. The need for intervention is urgent. On the positive side, during this crisis that lasts already for 7 months, we have also seen how partnerships and coordination work effectively. We were invited to join the UNESCO Global Education Coalition that has been an example of cooperation. This type of coordination should not end. We are closer now. We are sharing views and objectives. Let's keep on working together. But numbers are showing that we are running against the clock. What we call today a challenge, it can easily become a crisis or even worse, a no-return situation in just a few months for many children in vulnerable situations. At Profuturo, we believe that digital education is the right path, and that it is why we encourage governments and other public and private institutions and donors to join us in our effort to bring quality education to every corner of the world. We have the tools and the knowledge to turn this situation around, but we can't do it alone. We have to do it together with you and with others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Magdalena, for sharing this interesting contribution and the good work that you are doing at Profuturo in addressing the digital skills gap and the education challenges. So with this, let me now turn to our next speaker. The next speaker will be Wayne Holmes, who is a principal researcher for education at Nesta. And Wayne will provide an overview of the AI and COVID-19 education response that has emerged since the outbreak of the pandemic. Over to you, Wayne.
Hey, thanks, Susan. I I'd also like to thank UNESCO for their kind invitation to participate in this session. As we've already heard, it's increasingly clear that during this time of COVID-19, there's been a resurgence in the use of digital technologies to support teaching and learning, and in particular in the use of artificial intelligence, which, as a researcher in an independent foundation, that's my area of particular interest. In fact, the connection between AI and education raises many issues and suggests many questions. What exactly might artificial intelligence or AI bring to education? What are the promises and what are the implications? And what have been the unique benefits brought by AI to education, to teaching and learning during the time of COVID? To answer these questions, working with UNESCO's Unit for Technology and AI in Education, and also with the Commonwealth of Learning, we have invited educationalists, academics and technologists from around the world to contribute to a rapid review of the evidence. Exactly what have been the experiences and what have we learned about the challenges, the successes, and what has been revealed by the impact of COVID? Today, I'm going to be summarizing just some of the evidence that we've received. I'd also like to use this opportunity to encourage anyone listening to this panel who has evidence of the rapidly changing connection between education, AI and COVID, and who'd like to contribute to the rapid review of the evidence, to contact me. But first, I think it's important for me to clarify that although I'm working with UNESCO and the Commonwealth of Learning on this rapid review of the evidence, I'm speaking today in an independent capacity and giving my own personal views. I also should mention that, paraphrasing Gary Marcus, who's one of the world's leading AI researchers, I am a short-term AI and education pessimist, but a long-term optimist. In other words, I'm skeptical about much of what's happening in AI and education today, the overpromising and the mythologies. But I do think there's huge long-term potential, so long as the role of us humans is kept right at the center of developments. The first topic that I'd like to mention is the growing availability of so-called adaptive platforms, which have been used increasingly during school shutdowns due to COVID-19. These adaptive platforms work by providing students with some information, an activity and possibly a quiz. Then how the student responds, what they click and the answers that they give, determines the next set of information, activity and quiz that they're given. So each student follows their own personal pathway through the material. This approach has been researched for more than 40 years, but in the last few years, it's become increasingly available in many commercial products. The only problem is, well, a key problem is, that there's at present little evidence that these tools actually do what they claim to do. But to be clear, I'm not talking about platforms that my co-panelists have mentioned. In any case, what evidence there is often only shows that the tool can make student learning more efficient, which is a term that I find a little uncomfortable in education, and it can prepare students for examinations. But education isn't just about getting students through exams more efficiently. Instead, education is about helping young people develop their potential, to achieve their own ambitions, to do what psychologists call self-actualize, all in order to help them lead a good quality life and to contribute productively to society. All of this requires social interaction and collaboration, which is the opposite of what these so-called personalized tools provide. Nonetheless, these tools can sometimes be useful, for example, for use as homework to help students catch up with what's going on in class, or for use where human teachers are simply not available, although we have to be very careful that they don't become a reason not to employ human teachers. They've also been shown to be useful during times when schools are shut for prolonged periods, as happened around the world in the first months of COVID-19, as an emergency response. In fact, many of the companies offered their adaptive tools for free, and the number of student registrations often went through the roof. Increases of thousands of % were common. But I use the word registrations because there's far less evidence that student use of these tools increased by anywhere near the same amount. Student use did go up, but many students simply couldn't or didn't engage for long. There's also very little evidence that the students' use of these tools led to any significant learning achievements. The reality is that schools were very understandably desperate to ensure that their students were seen to be receiving at least some kind of education. In other words, students were signed up as an emergency response. In the UK, teachers often refer to this type of activity as busy time, ensuring that the students are busy doing something, even if it isn't clear what they are doing is educationally valid. We also have to be aware that during the COVID shutdowns, even when they were signed up to such a tool, many students, even in richer countries, were simply unable to access the tools. Either they didn't have suitable laptops, they didn't have internet access, or they didn't have anywhere in the home that was quiet enough for them to focus on their studies. So the AI did contribute, but it didn't offer all the answers. The second topic I'd like to mention is the use of AI tools to monitor student behaviours. We've long known about AI-driven facial recognition and brainwave detection tools used in classrooms to monitor whether students are focused on what they're supposed to be studying. There are many problems with these tools, and again, actually little evidence that they work, with many neuroscientists pointing out that the quality of information provided by the brainwave tools is especially crude. A more pressing problem is that another name for this type of monitoring is surveillance, which is something that for many civil liberties and privacy reasons has no part to play in education. Another type of AI-driven surveillance that's becoming increasingly common in this time of COVID involves trying to prevent students cheating while they're working on computers at home. This proctoring software automatically records and analyzes student faces while they're working online. For these tools, quite apart from the standard concerns about student surveillance and privacy, other issues centre on their failure to properly consider ethnicity, face shape and colour or disability. And yet again, there's little evidence that this software actually works. When AI-based student monitoring is first mentioned, it might sound like a quick solution to a problem exacerbated by the COVID lockdowns. But the question is, does this AI surveillance introduce far worse consequences that have yet to be fully thought through or addressed? My final topic is AI and examinations. In fact, around the world, the validity, accuracy and fairness of examinations are increasingly being questioned, with many arguing that exams are no longer fit for purpose. One proposed solution is the use of AI to constantly monitor students to create a more detailed and nuanced record of a student's achievements. For many, this might be intuitively attractive. However, another way of saying AI monitoring is, of course, AI surveillance, which I've already commented on. However, because of the school closures made necessary by COVID, education systems around the world were forced to diverge from their usual exam systems. In the UK, as many of you might have heard, an AI algorithm was used to calculate the grades normally based on exam results for 16 and 18-year-olds. Exam results days became a leading story around the world, with blame given to all sides about who's responsible for the mess. Meanwhile, students faced even more uncertainty about their futures than in previous years, with university places, apprenticeships, and employment opportunities all being affected. The AI algorithm, or the mutant algorithm as it was called by some, was used to determine student grades based on, among various factors, the grades previously achieved by the student school. In other words, individual student grades were determined mainly by how other students had performed previously. It had little to do with the individual students' achievements or capabilities. When it became clear how discriminatory this method was, how, for example, it actually downgraded students from geographically disadvantaged areas, the results were overturned and grades decided by schools were used instead. So the question is, was this fiasco down to AI? Were so many young people's lives turned upside down because an AI system could never have graded students fairly? There's probably something in that idea. As we know, AI can only predict outcomes based on the data that it is given. And if the data is wrong or biased, so will be the predictions. In any case, AI is only right on average and is right for specific individuals only most of the time, which is not good enough when individual young people's futures are at stake. The problem here probably wasn't the use of an algorithm in itself. Instead, it was the use of a particular algorithm, with little reference to professionals who know best, for whom I mean teachers. So as I've mentioned, various AI-based technologies have become common in classrooms since the arrival of COVID. And in doing so, some problems have been addressed while other problems have been introduced. As I also mentioned, I'm a short-term pessimist but a long-term optimist. The way that AI is being used today in education has too many problems. However, the reality is AI is here to stay, so it's not going anywhere. So what we need is for humans, especially teachers, to be back at the center. We need to use AI in times of COVID and times of relative normality to augment teachers, not to replace them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Wayne, for your important and thought-provoking intervention. I think indeed we need to look very carefully at the technologies that are being applied and their benefits in the short and in the long run. And we need to look at the evidence and the reality, look at the educational values. So thank you so much for bringing these aspects to the discussion today. Let me now turn to our next panelist, Mr. Ziqian Wang of Weidong Cloud Education Group in China. And Mr. Wang will present the work of Weidong Group to support developing countries with the setup of distance learning platforms. Over to you, Mr. Wang.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And thanks for the UNESCO to provide these opportunities for us to share IT period. And now I will share my screens. Yes. Okay. Okay, and that's my topic, to being countries to build learning platforms in response to COVID-19 education disruptions. As what I said before, that Weidong Cloud Education Group, and we regard ourselves as a global internet education platform operators, and we provide educational service for K-12, vocational, and higher education partners. And Weidong Cloud Educations now have has branches in more than 25 countries and regions around the world. For example, China, France, and etc. We are the strategic partners with UNESCO for many years. And since the beginning of the 2020s, and we know that the coronavirus outbreaks emerged immediately under the UNESCO's that launched the Global Education Coalitions immediately to seek to facilitate inclusive learning opportunities for children and youth during this period of sudden and unprecedented education disruptions. And Weidong Cloud Educations that we participate in these coalitions immediately to show our determinations to introduce the best practice of implementing our learning management system and digital education solutions for all the membership countries. This is remarks from our chairman that to the coalitions and to UNESCO. So I will share what we have really done during this period. That during the outbreaks that Weidong Cloud Education actively that participate a lot of webinars hosted by UNESCO headquarters, UNESCO IITE, share a lot of our experience and our solutions to different partners, countries, ministry, and areas. So during the shutdowns of schools in China, that we provide our platforms for more than 20 million students to study online, and also that our platforms and the solutions that support more than 9,000 education institutions, that we provide not only the platform, we provide the learning contents, and also that the teachers could still upload their own contents, their own materials for their students. And also we provide the live streaming classroom. During the live streaming teaching sessions, that the teachers could interactively communicate with students. And also that we provide the evaluation and the statistics service for all the teachers and students. And the teachers and students that can know their performance and get the best advice from our platform. This is what we have done with UNESCO. That with UNESCO ICHES, that we build a lot of smart classrooms in membership countries. For example, in Egypt, in Djibouti, in Cambodia, that our smart classroom is a modern composite of modern electronic devices and application solutions to facilitate and assist in a teaching environment. For example, that in Pakistan, that we built a smart classroom for Pakistans, and we also have co-organized a lot of meetings with Ministry of Education of Pakistan. And you see from these pictures that the teachers use our smart classroom to record the class, to record the lessons, and then upload to the platforms to share with all the students. And also that in Southeast Asia areas, that we cooperate with partners of UNESCO, that CMU. And also we have a lot of conference, and we have provided a lot of trainers courses, online courses with the Ministry of Education of Cambodia, for example, or Philippines. And they really have a better understanding of how to use the technologies to keep studying never stop. And this is another example that in Central Asia areas that that we are also the strategic partners with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Secretary Generals of these organizations that use our platforms and to study Chinese lessons online. Also that he shares his learning experience with all their membership countries. And also that we share with all the membership countries in these organizations that how we work with UNESCO and what we have done for the membership countries. So I think that during this time, we already have concluded a lot of good experience and good solutions for different countries and different partners. We think that education, we should consider it as an ecosystem, that it should be built from the infrastructures and then hardwares and then platforms and then contents. And also, I think a lot of countries, if they want all the students to keep studying, to not stop their learnings, they also need some financial support of all their projects. So we can combine all these solutions together and provide to different partners. For example, that about the contents that we have a demos group that is one of the largest vocational training group in Europe. So that we have more than 3,000 training courses online. And also we have more than 8,000 trainers all over the world that provide the training courses online to all the students. Also, we have a Behest Business Schools that is also one of the very famous French business schools. Also, we provide the online master degrees, online doctor degrees that we provide the students, the students in higher educations that they could also get the degrees from studying online. Yeah. So that is an example that we work with Cote d'Ivoire, that we work with the Ministry of Handicrafts of Cote d'Ivoire, that we have built a whole project for them for the vocational training, that we will build 13 training centers all over the countries, and which include digital education teaching equipment, and also management platforms, and also training courses, to make sure that during every time, no matter what time it is, that students and also the adults, that they could get the best quality vocational training courses online and offline. So that, as I mentioned before, that because we are the partners with UNESCO and also the members of the coalitions of UNESCO, so that we will still take the responsibilities to help and cooperate with all the partners for learning management platforms, also the learning online learning courses, and also we provide, if for some countries and for some partners that their infrastructure and connectivities is less developed, also we will provide some pilot smart classroom solutions, as mentioned before, to all the partners. So this is what I want to share today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ziquan, for this interesting presentation, for sharing the education platform that you have, and also how you work with other countries, how you work with developing countries to support them in their transition to introduce digital education. So with this, let me now move to our last panelist, Mrs. Nandini Chatterjee Singh from the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute. And Nandini will discuss how the success of education for the future depends on how well we work together to ensure quality content, how to maximize digital pedagogies, and invoke the moral imperative for the flourishing of every learner. So I'm looking forward to your intervention. Nandini, over to you.
Thank you so much, and hello everybody, and thank you for joining in. Well, now that online learning has become a reality, and it's something we can probably revisit to try and make sure that we bring back the focus of education for common good. At MGIP, we've been thinking a lot about what are the best practices that we can bring in so that we can achieve education for common good. So we are really trying to make sure that we have quality content. There is enough of a choice for learners in what they want to study and what they might choose from. And as Wayne Holmes referred to earlier, probably even find ways as more people begin to learn together on how we might collectively harness patterns of learning as they begin to happen across the world. And if we can begin to pool these resources to be able to collectively understand common good, as well as the best ways for children to learn. And at this point in time, it probably is worthwhile to go back to look at the neurosciences. And as a neuroscientist myself, this is something that has come to our forefront. We are today poised at that point in our lives where we actually know enough about how the brain learns and what are the best times that it might learn to be able to design content such that it is able to nurture the human brain. Because really the purpose of human brain is to build those circuits in that little structure which is between your 2 ears, so that we are able to behave and work towards peaceful and sustainable societies. So one very important finding that has emerged from the science of learning has been the fact that if we are to use technology as building ICT skills, it's going to be a complete waste. So we cannot think of the digital medium as something that is just going to be used to convey a lot of textual information, but instead need to use and harness technology to build learning experiences. Okay? And that's going to be central and should be central when we're looking at online learning. So we want to harness the notion that storytelling, the notion of play, the need for discussions are central for learning to happen well in the world. Okay? It's also important because we have different learners, that learning be multisensory, be self-paced, and be intrinsically rewarded. If learning has to happen because of the marks you are going to get, that learning is not going to be very permanent. And therefore, one of the very important things that we have now come to realize is, in order to be able to nurture the brain, we have to nurture not just the frontal cortex, where a lot of information and executive function takes place, and where a lot of our current learning systems are designed for, but also the limbic or the emotional cortex. So in short, there is a whole social emotional component for learning, which needs to now actively become a part of our learning experiences, which has been neglected all this time, but is now currently poised to be able to be intricately linked to intellectual learning, so that we can begin to build rewarding, playful, immersive experiences for our young learners. And today, technology is poised such that it can offer all these opportunities for this to actually happen. So it's important that we put together and help our children become the best versions of themselves, realize their best potentials, and thereby nourish their intellectual brain, their rational brain, their social brain, and the emotional brain. And these are all very intricately linked together. And then the whole idea of how learning happens is because of a process called neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to change. So if we are able to build learning experiences where these circuits work together, we can actually think of building an education system where we'll be building thinking citizens who will work towards peaceful societies. What we have also learned from the neurosciences of learning has been that based on the way the brain matures and the way different cortices of the brain mature, if we are able to present the right kind of learning at the right times, children learn much better. For instance, you can begin to start social and emotional learning as early as 3 years of age by helping children build emotional vocabularies to be able to express and communicate themselves better. We all know that language builds on a lot of social interactions. So if this information is not only brought into the classroom, but is also shared with the teacher, the whole learning experience becomes a lot more valuable and a lot better positioned biologically. And finally, like I mentioned earlier, we want to be able to harness the notion and the learnings from neurosciences to be able to nurture both the social brain, the emotional brain, and the rational and logical brain. So in short, we want to do whole brain learning. Okay. Now, whilst all of this is happening, and the fact that we are designing learning to become self-paced, and because it's going to be happening over public platforms, it's crucial that we protect the privacy of the learner. Okay? How do we make sure that this information, which now leaves a digital footprint, does not get misused by corporations or by agencies where this data is freely available? Okay. And therefore, data privacy is key to ensure when education is happening for common good. Keeping these things in mind is when we decided to put together Framerspace, which is a platform developed by UNESCO MGIP for school children and for university students now too, more for adult learners, young learners, and very importantly for young learners. Okay, so a lot of our content has been designed for school children, where we are trying to bring in the different aspects of dialogue, storytelling, gameplay, emotional experiences, attention regulation, mindfulness for children to engage in learning. In short, this is a platform which teachers can use to build learning experiences where students can come in to engage in learning for the courses that they really enjoy and want to learn from, where instructional designers can put in the latest practices on how best to create these learning experiences. And where also people who are interested in data crunching can get access to learning platforms and data that's happening. But how do we make sure that we do not do this at the cost of the learner? So this is therefore a GDPR compliance platform. So we do not take in any personal identity of a learner. Every time you come onto Framerspace and create an account for yourself, the system will assign a name to you, which you have to hold on to. That's the only part that you have to really remember and keep in mind. But that's something that you know and the system knows. Neither the teacher nor any of the data crunchers know what that personal identity is. So you might have a name like master, creator, wolf, bird, and you know that that's my login name. Okay. But I only care about the kind of patterns that you might be following as you engage in a learning experience. So here's a little snapshot of the kind of programs that we have on Framerspace, which we have currently built right now. So you have courses on global citizenship, you have courses on migration, you have courses on identity, but you also have game-based courses. So you see a course called Bury Me My Love, which is centered around a commercial game called Bury Me My Love, which is on migration, but linked to which we build learning modules through which children learn perspective taking, learn migration, and also learn skills of social and emotional intelligence. And at the same time realize how the process of migration happens even in birds. So there's information learning happening, and there's social learning happening, and there's emotional learning happening. And much of this can be shared by people across the world by engaging in dialogue. Okay. So content developers can use this to create not ICT skills, but build digital pedagogy experiences. And we've also created a program where teachers can learn how to create digital pedagogy experiences. So a marked shift from ICT to digital pedagogies. Okay. Building and bringing in social and emotional learning is a crucial part of every program and module that you build on Framerspace. And there are a number of ways where such activities are also provided for you as examples. Okay. So what we want to really leave this platform with is, we are not at the fourth industrial revolution, but we are at the beginning of the first intelligent revolution. We have a long way to go, but we have a unique opportunity where we can try and do this right and harness the best from the science of learning. So we are really looking to try and promote an idea that we want to develop education and promote education that can be used by all, is owned by none, but is really managed maybe by an intergovernmental agency or an international agency for common good. Because that really is what the purpose of education should always be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nandini, for bringing in this very interesting perspective from neurosciences in our discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 15, 16, 17 minutes left. I would like to now engage in the Q&A part of the session. And what I'll do is I will first ask all the panelists to just reply to one or both of the questions I will pose, but please not more than 1 minute if you can for each answer. And the question is the following. From your perspective, how are your learning solutions contributing to the common good? This is just in case you did not yet address it in your talk. And the second question would be, what more can be done to ensure that the solutions and strategies that emerged as part of the COVID-19 education response actually contribute to the common good or to the benefit of all people? So we'll go in the same sequence as before. Alex, can you share 1 minute your thoughts on these two questions?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I think the COVID-19 has just really highlighted the importance of connectivity. We all know that. It was even actually a topic in the UN Security Council on the importance of connectivity in a session hosted by Niger. I think the contribution, therefore, on GIGA in the broader learners is, we all know that last mile connectivity, one of the big findings on why last mile connectivity projects fail is an insufficient backhaul. In other words, we don't have the core network properly designed and implemented that can then serve as the pipe to get the content to and from the learners, not just the schools, but the surrounding communities. So that's what GIGA is really focusing on. And with all the attention on connectivity, the attention on new models of financing, we hope that we can contribute by laying, I guess you can call it the foundation or the pipes, that then many of you can then develop solutions to deliver the actual learning outcomes that we need for the kids around the world. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Alex. Paul, would you like to share your thoughts on those questions?
So, thank you, Susan. So first of all, I think going back to my example of the global digital library, an example of a global public good is basically making available in more than 70 languages reading materials for kids that can be used and accessed by more people and in their own language. I think that's a huge contribution. And COVID-19 has really highlighted the need for access to reading materials also in a home setting. So I do hope also after COVID-19 that one will retain the focus on, shall we say, providing more access to reading materials of high quality to kids, young people, adults also in the settings. We know that reading is the key basically to learning. And I also concur with what Alex just said, I mean, in terms of connectivity, obviously.
Yeah, okay, great. Zora, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. From my end, I would say that in alignment with the distinguished speakers before me, one of the key messages from our end is that no one can solve the problem alone. So we are endeavoring with our partners from the UN to the private sector to the academia to really find ways to join forces so that we can create quality and scale. This has been for us proven very much by the partnerships that we could create through the Global Education Coalition we joined in April, led by UNESCO. It has helped us really assess new possibilities of deployment across the globe. But I would say a key objectives also of our partnerships is to address the barriers of accessibility and affordability in a sustainable way. So how can we make sure that the solutions that we are deploying are actually not only accessible, as we are working with, as Alex was mentioning, on the connectivity side with ITU and UNICEF to bring access to connectivity to all, but beyond that, how can we make also this access affordable? So one example is that we are working with our customers, the mobile network operators, to provide free data bundles for accessing educational content across the globe. So this is one way to secure that access is, you could say, as free as possible for educational content of relevance.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks a lot, Zora. Magdalena, what do you think?
Thank you, Susan. We think that regarding the first question, that by opening our resources to everybody, we believe that we are contributing to the continuity of education during the pandemic. So we have shared for free more than 7,000 digital educational resources for children and families on science, math, literacy, and skills for life, and 163 teacher training courses in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. Still, we are all aware of the lack of connectivity challenge, and that is why we are offering as well our content and learning platform for free to governments and institutions that can provide an offline learning platform. And regarding the second question, as I mentioned before during my initial presentation, it is time for partnerships and collaboration. It's important as well to be flexible and act quickly to be able to modify our projects and interventions in order to reach as many children as possible. This situation has reaffirmed the need to build capacity in the field, strengthening local partners as they are the ones that can keep on working while the world is locked down. And one last thought to the importance of involving all the community in the students' learning. Parents need to support their children while learning from home, even if they have distance or online support of their teachers. The parents have a key role in their children's education, so it's important to invest on activities that raise awareness in the community in this regard. Before closing, just let me invite you to our virtual booth at the Mobile Learning Week website to know more about Profuturo and the work we have done during the pandemic. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., we will have a live show presenting the resources we have opened for teachers. You're all welcome. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you,
great.
Susan.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot, Magdalena. Now over to Wayne, please.
And thank you. I think the first thing I want to say is I've been really enjoyed other people's contributions. I think there's an awful lot going on. So my skeptical perspective does not apply to my co-panelists today. It's other tools that are very, very common that I'm really talking about. I think there are two things that we really need to focus on. The first thing, and this speaks to what everybody has said already, is we really need to be clear about what is the purpose of education. What are we trying to achieve with these technical tools? And just taking tools into education to replicate bad practices, for me, is not the way forward. So we need to have a clear agreement. What are we using education for? How we're using it to support our young people, to contribute effectively to society. The other point I would make is, for me, it's really fundamentally important that teaching professionals are at the center of all digital developments in the world of education. I've been to so many conferences around the world where technologists have stood up and said, we think teachers are really important. And then they spend the next 30 minutes talking about their tool that replaces the teacher. And I'm just so opposed to that. Teachers and students working together in collaboration is the way forward. And the digital tools, as we've heard this morning, can help facilitate that, can help teachers do it more effectively, more easily. And that's what I want to see with the digital tools, and that's what will help moving education forward for the common good.
Great, thanks. Thanks a lot, Wayne. Now let's hear from Jikyuan, please.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Yeah, I could not active my videos. It's okay. That I think I already share a lot of answers. I have already answered in my presentations because we already did a lot of projects in different countries. Actually, we really face a lot of difficulties because the situations is different from different countries. And I think that COVID-19 really let us know that the education is very important. And we should not discuss just about a specific digital tools or specific platforms. We think we have to discuss about the whole ecosystem. And different countries, different partners, they have different problem to solve. And for example, for some countries, their infrastructure is good, so maybe they will focus on the contents and the other things. And for some countries, for example, their infrastructure is not good, so they even do not have a concept about how to do the online and distance learning. So we should have a specific solutions for different partners, different membership countries. And I think that I think UNESCO really did a great job, and they get financial parts and different departments, and to have a lot of discussions and webinars. And so I think we do this one, finally have
okay, it's getting a little choppy.
Different solutions for different countries. We have good guidelines. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it got a little bit choppy towards the end, but thank you so much. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so let's hear from Nandini also, please.
I think I've talked a lot about the collective good already, but I think just want to bring back again the notion of the need for education to redefine its purpose towards not just economic growth, but human flourishing. and the need for all education to begin to build in emotional resilience. If there's one thing that has stood out during this COVID crisis has been the anxiety and the stress and the disconnect that people have felt. And we need to make sure that our kids are ready to be able to handle life and its different challenges as it goes on. And we now know that that can be trained. So how can we try and make sure that happens with the education systems that we will now design for them for the future? And how do we make sure that the competencies that they build help them to be flexible human beings who can work together? That's about all I'd want to add at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I was just looking at the chat questions, and I wanted to pick a couple and throw them back to the panelists. One is for Alex, one is for Zora, and then maybe one for whoever volunteers to answer. So one is on the GIGA. The question is, does it work with NGOs? Do you have experience in Eastern, Western, and Southern Africa and Arab countries? There is a question also for Zora. How does one go about learning more about your work and creating partnerships in terms of bringing such programs to schools in marginalized locations, as well as incorporating e-learning programs into your initiative? And then I can see one question, which is quite provocative, and whoever volunteers to take that. Don't you think the time of educating thinking citizens is a bit overdated? We have a need to shape acting citizens. With 10 years to reduce carbon emissions, we cannot afford to shape another generation of thinkers. We need doers. Thoughts on that? So let me first ask Alex, then I will ask Zora, and then who would like to address, or if any would like to address the last question. Please go ahead, Alex.
Yep, thank you. On the first question, absolutely. In fact, the whole idea of GIGA is to be a platform that brings all the actors together. On a global level, we are forming what we're calling an interim experts group, and would welcome you to send us details. You can also send an email on the GIGA Connect website. I shared the link earlier. And then as we get into each country, as we get developed and get going, we will have country platform discussions. So those are all starting to kick off. Obviously, COVID's delayed a bit of that because doing these things online is a little more challenging. But please send us details and let us know where you're interested in, and we'll be happy to follow up. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alex. Zora, would you like to address the question that was raised to you? And then the last question I'll ask Nandini, so get ready.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. So I would say we welcome all partnerships with NGOs, governments, private sector. So basically, you just contact us. It's as easy as that. So you can either contact us. I'm putting the address on the chat. Either you can contact me directly to my email, or at the connecttolearn@ericsson.com email address. And you can find more information about what we do on our Ericsson page dedicated for the education program Connect to Learn. So you're very welcome to contact me.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Zora. Now, the question on thinking citizens versus acting citizens. Nandini, do you have any reactions to that?
I'd love to at least share my 2 cents. So we are trying very hard to try and build agency on frame of space. And so as kids undergo different modules, they are encouraged to get into the shoes of the policymaker, the doer, and to become doers. So one of the things, for example, a student might do is you're seeing a policymaker responding to a situation happening, and then you pause the video and you tell the student and say, now, how do you think about this? Would you want to react the same way or respond the same way? And if yes, and if why and why not? And often try and even nail down ideas of cognitive dissonance. Okay? So we are all very aware that there are a number of changes we need to make in our lifestyles in order to be able to work towards and handling climate change, but there are not too many people are willing to do so. So can we actually nail down the question and say, why might you not be doing it? Because it probably comes at disturbing your own convenience. But how do you think of larger good? And therefore, what might be the steps you take? So we are very consciously doing this on Framer Space, is getting young kids to start taking on agency and seeing what the effects of those changes might be. And that's one place where games have really assumed very, very relevant forms. You can begin to see the impact of how your actions can have long-term implications. So we'd be delighted to share more of this with you. So you need to come to Framer Space.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Nandini. We would love to continue the discussion, but I'm afraid the time is coming to its end. And we heard great, very rich interventions from all of you. Just a couple of takeaways from my side as I was listening is the importance of school connectivity that needs to be addressed when we talk about distance education and digital learning and education. We should not only look at high tech, but also perhaps low tech solutions that could be considered as they are being adapted to the learners. We were also looking at the importance of equipping teachers with the skills. Computers will not replace teachers. That is also something that I took out of it. Data privacy is very important when we use these various digital tools and platforms. And then, of course, when we're looking at all the discussion around AI in education, so let's look at the positives but also the negatives, and be very realistic in terms of how we are applying the tools and what are the main benefits that we can get out of them. So with this, I think we are running out of time. Let me just say that, in fact, we at ITU are also quite active in the field, and I invite you to also visit the ITU Academy platform, which has a lot of tools and training available that may be of interest to you working in this field. So with this, I would like to close by thanking all of the panelists for their participation and active engagement. Let me also thank UNESCO for having organized and invited me to moderate this panel, and for your wonderful support in that, and all the participants for joining the session. And hereby the session is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.